Okay, this is a battery out of a Firman generator. It's a YTX5L-BS 5.5 ampere hour. It's one that came with the unit, so it's got screw-on lugs, and I'm not sure if the replacement ones have that. This is for a WH03242. I've had it for about 2 years. It's worked flawlessly, and now the battery's kind of just pooped out. So I've got it hooked up to a load tester, which I don't have on now. I've got a power supply, and originally it was only drawing about this is 2 amps now at around 15 volts. It was about 0.05 amps, 50 milliamps. And so I had this charging for many hours and nothing really was happening. So what I did is I had hooked up my load tester, and I've got this set for 20 amps. So I went through and drew 20 amps. This is 20 amps. Here it's down to 2.8 volts. But after doing a couple loads on it, it's starting to go ahead and draw some current. So probably a couple of the cells in this are bad, and so it's bucking down and just running on a couple of them. But it was originally at, when I first got out of the unit, it was to where it wouldn't turn the generator over when you push the button. It would just barely click, and then it wouldn't accept any charge on this. I let it run a long time, wouldn't accept any charge, and then by putting a load across this, it must have gone through, and now it'll accept some charge. So this 2 amps, this supply here, you can set the voltage limit, and you can set the current limit. And so I'm just trying to see, it's now pulling some current, which is probably a good sign. I'm not trying to resurrect this battery, but I just was trying to see if it had any capacity at all. Again, this is a electronic load to PLZ 164W, and I've got it programmed to 20 amps. So when I push this button, this has got 12 gauge wire here that goes through. So if it goes right now at 14 volts, there's about 12.8 with the power supply off. If I hit the button, it drops all the way down to 3 volts. A minute ago it was only dropping down about 2 volts, like all the cells. This is probably, it's got 6 cells in series. 6 times 2 is 12 volts. So it's like they're all goofed up inside. Now it's like there's only 2 that are working out of the 6, maybe 5. But the voltage is not really dropping too much across these 12 gauge wires. That's like basically household wire I'm using here. So I'm drawing 100 watts. I want to go ahead and later measure what the current draw is on this on cranking with an external power supply just out of kicks to see how many amps it is. So I'm drawing 20 amps right now. Supply is not connected. I can undo this here. And I can go through here and increase the load if I want to. Let's go ahead and make it 30 amps. Let's smoke this. And turn this on here. And why aren't we charging? Got the load off. Not really accepting any charge. Yeah, we don't have this hooked up. Get this all goofed up. That's why colors are good. That's the minus. Here's drawing 5 amps. So I wonder, I had this battery hooked up, which I have another video showing what the slight trickle is. Like it'll get discharged in a half a year. It's just I think it's a few microamps or milliamps or something. I've got another video, but maybe it needs to be cranked up every now and then so the cell doesn't get goofed up. So long term, I may end up just hooking a set of external wires here and let the battery hang outside. And just use one of my old UPS batteries, which is longer, and just got some of these off Amazon. I saw it on another video, and just hook it onto the generator and hook one onto the battery, so I can just check the battery and not have to rip this thing open. Had a little bit of hard time getting this thing out. But what's weird is the ones I've seen online do not have screw-on lugs. And they kind of say replacement, so I don't know. If you Google this, sometimes you'll find a battery that's got a wider case. So just that battery number a lot of times shows the same thickness here, same height, but with a wider case. So I think Firman had made a special version of this with lugs. So we'll go through here and take this off. Now turn the load on. 30 amps around 5 volts. So we got a decent amount of current. So before I started all this thing, it wouldn't even, I drew like 1 amp and it basically collapsed it. So by cycling this back and forth, charging it up some, discharging, charging it back up again, now it's actually got some current capacity at least. This device here, you can change the mode to constant current, constant resistance, constant voltage, constant power. So I could set this to constant power here and set this to be, let's say we wanted to have this be, let's say the starter motor needs to draw 100 watts. We'll just pull that number out of our behind here. That's close enough. 101. There's 100 watts. So we'll put this on here. It's drawing 5 amps at 11 volts. Turn this off. Now let's put a 100 watt load on. There you go. About 18 amps at 5 volts. Got 3 of these generators. One of the batteries still works. The other one, I think, died in September, and this one just died in November. And I bought those. God, they were on eBay really cheap, like 250 bucks. I've got one in a remote building. Let me know if you found a battery like this that's plug compatible you can put in, because I found some like this and it looks like they've relabeled to say compatible, but then you got to goof around with the lugs. It's kind of a tricky thing to get that. You go in through where the air cleaner is here. There's the generator again. In the manual it shows you the battery here. It shows like it's got clips, and the 3 of them I've looked at have screw-on terminals. This is showing you unscrew the air filter, and then you've got this rubber sheath that goes on the top. It's kind of got a strap on it. I had to mine. I ended up taking the air cleaner and undo the clip so I could Rubik's Cube to get this thing out of there. This is the connector that hooks up when you first buy the unit. It's on the negative terminal, and you go through and plug this in. This is so if the unit sits in the box for 6 months a year, it doesn't drain the battery through the the circuit board that's in there. Anyways, the 2 of the units I've taken apart have had this battery in it. And the size of that is here. It's 100 millimeters tall this way. 108 with the clips. And then the width on this one is 90 millimeters, 3.54 inches, and the thickness this way, depth, is 70. And then when I've Googled this part number, I found some that show a battery that's wider that's not going to fit in there. So that's a little bit of the confusion. One of the third units I don't happen to have right now with me had this battery inside. That was the number on it on here. But it was the same physical size. So that's why I printed this data sheet out probably about a year ago. It shows that for cycle use, set to 14.7 volts. For standby, it's a little bit less, 3.65. So when you saw me charging that earlier, you can kind of go up a little higher. Here's a max charge current is 0.3 C. And here's the terminal voltage versus discharge curves. And I've only discharged this thing right now is hardly at all. On the schematic here that I've enlarged, if you look here, you've got the starter. Here's the battery. And then there's a solenoid here that fires it off. And then they've got a 10 amp fuse that goes over here to the engine switch. And that is probably on the, that's on the coil to the solenoid. So it's got, the positive goes up through here, goes all the way to the input terminal where you charge it. So if you went ahead and tried to backfeed this to jump start it, I'm not sure how thick this wire is, because it's only made to go ahead and provide a little bitty wimpy current to charge this battery. So if I hooked a connector up here, tried to put 20 amps DC to run the motor, it might be that this wire here is the limit through here. So I haven't opened the unit up to go through. Here's the ground on this. But again, this positive side of the battery goes up to this input connector here, which is where you hook the charging wall wart into here. So to keep the cost down and everything, if I had to bet, I'd say this is a wimpy wire through here. Got the AC coil, sub coil, DC coil, charge coil. So charge coil goes through here through a rectifier to charge the battery. DC coil goes through and has a crude DC output designed to charge batteries. And then it's got a USB jack where they've sort of filtered it and got a 5 volts here. But this is not a good 12 volts for something. It needs to be 12. It's one that probably open on, it's probably closer to 16, 18 volts. It's used to charge generally like another 12 volt battery, car battery or something. There's your 120 out and your 120 for RV plug. So I'm really not sure how big these wires on there. This wire here, the stock wire that connects up, I believe is a 10 gauge wire. Let me see if I can. (105C). (10 wire gauge). So that little motor on there, I want to go through and take the battery out and take one of my bigger power supplies and just for kicks just see what the starting current is on this to kind of get a gist of this. But I may on my generators just go through and run a wire outside and then use a bigger UPS battery, which I've always got some. I replace some on a UPS and one's still got some life. I may end up doing that just so the battery's external. And so the batteries are probably cheaper. And then for standby use, you don't have to sit there in the dark and get in the back to get this thing off. It's a little cute battery. I just don't know if I buy a brand new one for 20, 30 bucks. Is it going to last a year or two and that's it? Who knows?